are with our second panel, and we have a distinguished guest, Miss Ruth E. Carter, who is a costume designer extraordinaire and who is a member of the Academy, so that's a nice flow coming from the former president of the Academy. And Miss Carter has worked on also iconic films, ones that speak to me as I came into my own political consciousness. Films like Jungle Fever, Malcolm X, Do the Right Thing, etc. And as you are going to hear in this interview that she is going to do with Miss Tamara Houston, our leader from ICON MANN, she has also overseen the production of a little-known film called Black Panther. So we're very excited to have Miss Ruth Carter with us. Can I invite you up, please? Go ahead. Let's turn this on. And Miss Tamara Houston, who's going to work on this interview.
How are you? Is this on? You guys can hear me? We're good? So I have to tell you, incredibly excited. Just so you know, when we were thinking about how to provide, every single year we seek to have a conversation that's not being had in the business, specifically to creation, to film, to content, to actors, to how you approach material. And one of those was, we know that the scope of what we've seen since the first trailer for Black Panther hit literally has said that there's a completely cultural shift that is happening. And as we started to dive into that, what we saw was the best moments of our life, or at least of my life, have been crafted by your work. And the actors that I have been so moved by, that I've had opportunity to speak with, have shared with me that what helps them to get fabulously into character, to truly become, if you will, method for those of you that study in that way, is that your entire immersion system has to be there. And all roads led back to Ruth E. Carter. So we thought it would be absolutely wonderful at this time of the year to have her come and be with us, so thank you. And
it's on now.
Before we jump into the conversation, and there will be a 15-minute Q&A afterwards, we are first going to run, and with Ruth, it is absolutely necessary that we show 2 trailers. It is one, to understand that for the past 25 years, she has been in your homes and in your lives. And then 2, we will see where we are now. So, Mark, if you please. Thank you.
That's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work. That's a lot of amazing work. So let's start from what first brought you into this side of the business. And for those of you that don't know, we all have to go to Springfield, Massachusetts. We do? We do. Because? Because aren't you from?
Because the Basketball Hall of Fame is there?
Oh, no. I think we have to go there because apparently that's where greatness.
Because my mom is there?
Yes, and Cheryl Boone Isaacs and Ashley. There's, for the black people that are in Springfield,
yes,
you guys
exactly.
are definitely the thing.
Thank you. Thank you. I've always loved character. I started wanting to be an actor. I love character, and I love discovering character with actors. That's been a passion of mine since I was in high school. You know, I've asked actors that have come in my fitting rooms how they got started, and I remember having a conversation with Daniel Kahlua, and he was talking about his experience in being in high school summer programs, after school things, and his journey felt very much similar to mine. And so, you know, we started on a real similarity, you know, and a connection we made immediately with our childhood. So I've always loved, like, the journey that an actor goes on. And I go on that same journey. I'm right there with you. I just have to go on that same journey with everyone, the whole cast. And it can be daunting, but I do really become like a sponge, you know, to your ideas and the things that you care about as far as the characterization goes. So I'm like the explorer that finds the intricacies of the character and how I can communicate them through the clothing. And I've always been that way. I started in Springfield, as you know, and I was in theater. You know, I was in a lot of programs growing up. Like one was called Uhuru Sasa, and I was in those programs that were about, you know, enhancing the arts and also making you aware of your African roots, you know, in a very authentic way. So it's not a surprise for me to come to Black Panther because I've been on this journey my whole entire life.
So as we talk about the journey, you've done a number of films, and probably your starting films was all of Spike Lee. So School Days, Do the Right Thing, Mo Better Blues, etc. What were your first experiences on set? And was that your first major motion picture work was with Spike?
Spike was a great teacher in that way. I came to Spike with my first film. His first studio film was called School Days. It was about an HBCU. I had graduated from an HBCU. He came from Morehouse. I came from Hampton. So it was a subject matter that we were familiar with. And so the language of what the visuals were was very common. We were going to have fraternities and the step show and, you know, all of that. So, but what he taught me was the filmmaking process. And the filmmaking process sometimes is much different than the theater process. I started before Spike in theater. I did a lot of theater. I loved theater. I did opera. I was at the Santa Fe Opera, and then I came out to LA and I met Spike. I wasn't really interested in film. I felt like when I first saw She's Gotta Have It, I was like, well, there's nothing here. I just did Moliere. I just did Shakespeare. I just did the opera where we're building these corsets and these beautiful opera costumes from scratch. And here is Nola Darling walking through Brooklyn Mall, and she's just in some regular clothes. But I didn't realize that there is a dynamic to the medium. There is a difference in the filmmaking, in the film medium, and that's what Spike helped me to understand. And back then, it was a lot different than it is now. We weren't shooting in digital. We were shooting with real film. And each night, we would come into a room very similar to this, and we would see our dailies. We would look at the day before, a couple of days before what we had shot, and we'd sit there with I'd sit there with my keys. Every department was represented. We'd have pizza to the side, and we talk amongst ourselves about, you know, what were the problems, what we could do better, what you know, what worked and what didn't work. So it was almost like going to like a master class or film school. And that, I did 12 films with Spike, and it was like that on each one of them. We always reviewed what we had done, or we always talked in depth about what the intention was. You know, we shared a lot, and I think that's how I cut my teeth.
So definitely to work with a director and have that aesthetic and that close-knit relationship is one animal. But then as Spike's films were progressing, you now start to work with Denzel, who is very much method in his approach to the character, to the work. So Mo Better Blues, Malcolm X, for which you received your first Academy nomination, which is amazing. Yeah. So what was your approach now to take what you're thinking conceptually as the costumes and apply that to how he's going to approach the character? Like, where's that meeting of the minds for the two of you?
How do you know that Denzel is method? Did he tell you that? Yeah, well, I guess we all know.
I don't want to say.
Because, you know, he is. And I like it when actors, like, let you do your job, because you'll never see yourself in 3D. You'll only see yourself in 2 dimensions. You're like a piece of paper to yourself, you know? And Denzel lets you do your job. He has a high expectation. The bar is very high. And you know that this vessel that you're communicating your art through is going to be received in a brilliant way, because he's going to perform. But he's not a clothes horse. He's not a person that really actually knows, and that happens a lot. And when actors say, when they expect that you're going to present to them ideas, then they meet you halfway, and you can talk. It's very much a transformation process, and so when you find that you have the right the costume on an actor, they actually come to life as the character. The character, it's I don't know, it's like a magical time. I feel that when you have a person in your fitting room, they're coming to you as the person whom they are. And it's my job to look at you and actually look beyond you and see this character that you are supposed to play and figure out what's the best way of pulling that out of you or enhancing your physical self with this character. And that's not always easy to do, because you discover that, you know, there's body form, there's skin color, there's eye color, there's hair color, and you sometimes also have to transcend your mind to thinking, how can we change this hair? How can we, you know, change the structure of the body to suit whatever it is that we need this look to be like, and also make it something that's wearable and not a costume. So there are lots of stages to developing a costume for an actor, and it's wonderful to know that this person is open to it and willing to sort of collaborate. I don't get many actors that like put up the wall, but I have had some that wanted me to leave the room and close the door while they tried the clothes on and then come back in. And, you know, I learned nothing from doing that. I really do need to understand what the mistakes are so that we can move forward. So from going, dressing Denzel, which I dressed him in Mo Better Blues, I dressed him in Malcolm X. I have fitting photos of him playing the trumpet as Bleak Gilliam from Mo Better Blues in my fitting room. Like, he's in the costume. I finally got his arms and his legs in the clothes, but he's practicing the trumpet. I remember having zoot suit fittings with him in Manhattan, and he is studying the speeches. He's going through the speeches in his mind all during the fitting. So, you know, it's up to me to understand where he's taking this journey and meet him there, and not go too far. Just, you know, really ride that fine line to discovery.
And in writing that fine line, one of the things that I love about your work is how extensive your research is.
Thank you.
And I think the first time that we really started to get a glimpse of that was with Malcolm X, and then when we got to Amistad, which was a completely different animal, which, I mean, actually draws the wonderful line to the world of Wakanda, and we'll do a bigger presentation. But could you share with us a bit about your research, and when you're breaking down the characters, do you already know this is the actor that it's going for, and you start to build towards that? How does that process work?
Thank you. First, I have to understand the world that I'm dressing. So the world is of the period, of the time, and then there is the script, which gives me the texture and the tone, whether it's broad, whether it's serious, whether it's dark, whether it's bright. I get all of that information from the script, and also studying the time tells me what the color palette is, whether it's in 1940s, you know, there's certain colors that would not really fit within that model. If it's the 60s, you remember the greens and the oranges of the 60s, and all these combinations of information come together, and then I start delving into the research. And I've always been a stickler for research. Came from the theater, and so with theater, you study the history of garments, and that's where it began for me. I studied the history of clothing from doing opera. I had to know what period we were doing when we had bucket boots or we had doublets. And so research was very comfortable for me. When we were in Brooklyn doing Malcolm X, and I was researching back then, you're making a lot of Xeroxes, you know, you're copying a lot. So I had just these big binders of, you know, shoe research and hat research, and what comes with that is people research. You start looking at actual photographs of people. You study these photographers of the different times, and you see like what New York looked like in Harlem in 1940. And you're just amazed, you're enthralled. It sucks you right in, because not only now do you understand the clothing and what the period of the clothing is, now you see the why people dressed the way they did, why they chose certain clothes. And you know that in the 1920s for Rosewood, that, you know, a woman may have only had a work dress and a church dress, And you could see the age on the clothes, and then you start getting into the costume of that. A couple of things. On Malcolm X, I knew from his autobiography, the one that Alex Haley wrote, that he was in prison in Boston. And I was from Boston. I was like, well, let me just write the Department of Corrections and ask if I could see his file. And through a letter writing campaign, they granted me the permission to go to Boston, and I walked into a girl who was sitting in an open area at a desk, and she had a file yay high, and said, you know, there's a cubicle down the hall. You can take the files over there and look to your heart's content. And there's a Xerox machine down the other way, and make some copies if you want. And I was like, wow, I have like his whole life right here in front of me. So I read letters that he wrote to the commissioner about wanting to go to being transferred to another prison, to go to a better library. I looked at his booking photos. I looked at all of these things that you would think, okay, there's no pictures here. Why does that make a difference for a costume designer? But I have to be in his head as a young man. I have to know, you know, what I have to relate to it in some kind of way, why he makes the choices that he makes. When I look at his booking photos and I see his hair is a mess and he's got a t-shirt on, you know, all that information kind of goes into your subconscious, so that when it's time to dress Denzel and you have that scene where he has a gun to his head and all of that, you kind of already got the spirit of what that should look and feel like. And so she let me take Xerox copies of everything all day, of actual Malcolm X's you know, file while he's in prison. So the same thing happened with Amistad. On Amistad, you know, it's hard to imagine because during Amistad there was no photography. So I had to look at a lot of art history. So I went to art history, and there's a beautiful volume of books. That's the Blacks in Art. Isn't that what it is, Paul? Blacks in Art. We both have the same library, I think, me and Paul. He's such an avid collector. And so I looked at Blacks in Art, and I saw all the same kind of imageries, just like going through Malcolm X's file. I was feeling like, okay, this is what it looked like. You know, and painters, they're always thinking composition, and as a filmmaker, you're thinking composition as well. So it also informs you as through the color palette. And I thought, what would the Africans look like on the ship, on the Amistad, when they were lost and kind of circling around the New England Sound, just, you know, going around in a circle, basically. And so I thought, let me see the cargo list on the Amistad. So I looked at the cargo list, and I thought, well, if they were lost in the New England Sound, in the sea there, how would they, you know, they're people, they're not like slaves that don't have, you know, past. They made shoes, they made clothes, they had religion, they had a culture, and they still have it on this ship. You know, they're just out of Africa. So what's on this cargo list? There was fabric, there was leather. There was different things that I felt that the captives would have used to adorn themselves and to make themselves warm. And so we used the cargo list, and we actually filled the cargo list in the wardrobe department so that I could drape turbans on their head. If they were Muslim, I could give them a Muslim kind of drape. And that's what informed me to create this world of the captive slaves on the Amistad, which we have no idea in any kind of way what they actually look like there.
That's fascinating, because just to hear the incredible deep dive there. And I mean, I would have to think as an actor that would help them even go more into the piece, because you're understanding the history and the connectivity so that there's a synthesis through the work, which actually leads us to where we are today, which is Black Panther. And the world of Wakanda. You have a Wakandanite right there. She's throwing some signs.
Yes.
So I just want you guys to kind of roll with us a bit on this. Oh, you got more up there. Stop. Okay, got it. Okay, everyone in the room, let's just go. Hit it. Hit it. Boom. Right, we're good?
Wakanda forever.
Wakanda all day. So what we're going to do, I asked Ruth to send me some material with regards to how she came to create Panther. And I must tell you, I was astonished at what she sent over, because it was so incredibly in depth, and there was the thought of cutting it up hurt, So I could not do that. So Mark, if you will cue this up, and what you will get to see is actually, we're going to go through, probably not all of the slides because
hope
it's
I don't bore
75,
you.
but we're gonna kind of walk you through what Wakanda looks like and how it came to be and the research of the tribes and et cetera. Okay?
So Wakanda's this fictitious place. It's right there. It's fictitious. There is no Wakanda, folks. Okay, so it's right there in the middle of Africa.
Yes, and so here is where you start to
That's
map
what
out
Marvel
the
made
city.
sure that I said when they saw this deck. They was like, make sure you say it's fictitious because it's sitting right there with a shape right there in the middle. Somebody might try to find it. And so it's going pretty fast, but I think that's because it's a PowerPoint. So we did all of this research, and we figured out where the tribes were from. We had a timeline. We had all of this subtext as to what each tribe meant to Wakanda. So the Tuareg, you know the Tuareg from North Africa, they're sub-Saharan. They are the merchant tribe of Wakanda, just for example. And if you know a little bit about the Tuareg, they have this beautiful silver jewelry. Silver is their precious metal. And they, you see the beautiful Ethiopian crosses and all the beautiful earrings that they have. And so they are the merchant tribe of Wakanda. They are the traders. And so we translate those ideas from those tribes into a society where you can be traditional, but you can also use your culture and use it in a modern way. So you can keep going. So this was part of the Wakandan Bible. We had a Wakandan Bible, and it outlined everything. So you have the border tribe. They came from say that. Border tribe, right there. Border tribe is from Lesotho, the Lesotho people. Lesotho people from Lesotho. It's either way. And they had these incredible blankets. When Ryan Coogler was studying the tribes of the script, the Black Panther, he went to South Africa and he spent time with them. The Lesotho people are some of the uncolonized, the most uncolonized community of people in Africa, and they're mountainous. They're sheep herders. And they wear these incredible blankets. And Ryan Coogler fell in love with the blankets, and he wanted to use them as the shields in the Black Panther. So I had to show them a way that this would be the indigenous way that the Lesotho people are seen. And then on the next frame, you see how we imagined it in more of a futuristic model with combining culture and modern dress. So this is Daniel Kahlua and his character, because he was the leader of the border tribe. And for Ryan, the border tribe was like the police, and he wanted them to have this blue color. He felt it was very relatable and very had kind of an authoritarian a look about it, being in this blue. So we designed Daniel's blanket to have this border tribe pattern. We actually got the Lesotho blankets from South Africa, about 200 of them, and then we printed silver on the other side to be like vibranium, so that the blankets could be shields, because vibranium is the strongest metal in Wakanda. Now, go back. And you want me to hit that? Okay. Okay. So here's
I'm thinking of we have 75 slides.
Yeah, I'm gonna hurry.
I'm gonna
hurry. This is the merchant tribe. I told you other way. I told you the merchant tribe is based on the Tuareg, and here they are, the Tuareg in their cultural look. They're sub-Saharan. The men cover their faces, and the women do not. Yes, and so then we reconstructed it in a modernistic model where you can be a Tuareg and you can wear your traditional, but you can also, pimp it on out right there. Then Zuri, he represents the Tuareg, but also because he was a shaman of Wakanda, they didn't want him to be any really specific to any tribe, because he had to sort of deal with everyone of Wakanda. So we mixed a lot of Nigerian and Tuareg. He has the purple royal color of the royal family. Then you have the miners. The miners. You remember the woman in the film? She had the hair with puffs on the end. You know, that's from the Himba tribe. So the miners have this color too. Everyone had their own color palette. So this is a little bit of an interpretation too, but this would be the miners walking in Wakanda, where it's perfectly okay to be totally tribal and walking into like a convenience store, you know. But we also, we also reinterpreted that, and we kind of enhanced it. And I wanted to bring in this even brighter orange color so that they would not look like they had nothing, and the royal family had everything. So, and then we had the Golden Tribe. They were based on the Zulu of South Africa. And it was really important for all of us to see these different areas of Africa where these tribes come from, because we really covered the continent in many ways. So the Zulu, you know, they do much more skins, and they have their traditions and their culture. And the Zulu married woman's hat is what Ramonda's, Angela Bassett's crown was based on. So we modernized the Zulu tribe in that way. Then we have the artisan. Artisans come from the eastern side of Africa, near Namibia, I think. And the artisans actually got cut, and they were like kind of like my favorite, because they're artisans, and you know, we're using a lot of patterns and combining a lot of beadwork, like from the Turkana tribes and stuff. And then we modernized it, and we brought it in more to an Afro-punk kind of a feel. Then we have the River Tribe, which is one that Lupita represented. You might have remembered her at the King's Challenge. She had on face paint and beads, and so this is the. They're also based on the Surma tribe, which has these incredible stick fighters. If you ever go to YouTube, because I couldn't stop. These guys are like stick fighting like crazy. And so we modernized it, and we, you know, kept some things traditional, and then gave this color palette a modernized look. So here is Ramonda in her Wakandan royalty. The hat is taken from, there's two types of places in Africa where this hat really lands. The Zulu tribe, which is the Zulu married woman's hat, but there's also, it escapes me right now, Isolo, where they reform the head to fit within this cone shape on the head. So this is very much a African shape, which I felt looked very royal. It looked like a crown. So we had the hat and her shoulder mantle 3D printed. There's a girl at UCLA, Julia Corner, who is leading the way on printable, wearable art. So that this has to be done in Europe, where they use a special material that's flexible. So by the time these things come out of the printer, and they come out in a big like sugar cube that's like powdered sugar, and they kind of chisel away, and then inside of it is this little present of a hat or a shoulder mantle that's in pieces that we put together. I think that shoulder piece came out of the printer in like 3 pieces, and we kind of glued it together. So there is the Royal Palace. It's part of our Bible. It's right there in the center of Wakanda, and I had very little time. I started in July, we were shooting in January, so I had to use my, New York City knowledge to sort of figure out what Wakanda was and where people were in each one of the districts, but it was very much like New York, where they had a Central Park, they had a merchant area that's like meat packing, they had Steptown, which was like NYU, they had the Civic District, which was like Columbia, and so I kind of use those metaphors to remind myself of what kind of clothing the people would wear. We did this photo shoot in Atlanta when we were all finished, and I remember standing there watching this photo shoot, really feeling like we had something special.
And that was obviously that was the iconic image for everyone that started to transform and say that there's something you haven't seen before. And to one of the points you mentioned earlier, which was doing the research and trying to understand the why. With Wakanda or Panther, what you had was a series of comic books, and as Reginald was here earlier, and David pointed out that Reginald Hudlin created the character of Shuri,
yes,
which we're all very excited about and happy. So when you're understanding the why of how do you bring Chadwick to your page, because
Well-
he's done a Marvel movie before. I mean, he did Captain Avengers with the
Captain,
different.
no, he did
was
Civil
it-
War, Captain America Civil War. He was the,
America Civil
they
War.
they premiered the Black Panther in Captain America Civil War. It's hard. I don't
I'm
feel
like,
bad.
I'm not in that world. I'm not in that world. But so how did you change, I think, his approach to the character and all of that from there to bring him to now this world that you've created of Wakanda?
So Ryan Coogler was a comic book fan. Marvel, they're the comic book people. So I had to rely on their knowledge and what they knew about the comics. I also happened to be on Marshall with Reggie Hudlin when I got the movie, and I was like, wow, I got Chadwick standing in front of the camera, Reggie Hudlin behind the camera, like how perfect is this? And so I started at first asking Reggie some questions about the Black Panther, and everybody kind of said the same time, technologically advanced country, you know, they have all these blendings of cultures and blah, blah, blah. So it was Ryan really that said, you know, we have to present Africa in a really regal, royal way. I want to do something different. I want to do something that we haven't seen before. We're not going to make the women in cheerleader skirts and tube tops. We're going to cover them like they're real warriors. I mean, it was Ryan who actually was the leader of the ship. And I snuck some things in, so I'll tell you. And Marvel, you know, they're very hands-on, so they hand you a script. They hand you a sketch. Basically a piece of paper with the Panther suit on it. And when I talked to Ryan, he's saying, listen, I want him to do this scene in the suit. And I'm thinking, okay, is that going to be weird when he's walking around in the suit? Around Wakanda, you know? And so I looked at this sketch and I said, you know, I have to make him not only a superhero, I have to make him an African king. So I used a pattern that's like a little triangle pattern. It's kind of like the sacred geometry of Africa, and I put it all over the suit. And there was already in the sketch this Wakandan language that they had veining through the suit, that when he was met with this kinetic energy, it would light up. So I thought, okay, well, there's this other surface. I noticed that most superheroes have some kind of a texture to their suit. And I'm going to add this triangle. I'm going to add this little tiny triangle. And in combination with the Wakandan language and this medallion that you see in the center of his chest there, it will feel like the tapestry of Africa. It will feel like the fabrics that you see when they are combined with different shapes and different lines and different patterns. So when he does take his helmet off and he is walking around Wakanda, he's not only a superhero, he's an African king.
He's an African king, and you guys were filming in Atlanta, and
Yeah.
where were okay, so that's definitely a wonderful leap, which means that connectivity, again, has to be there. If we could move forward, I think love to touch on so this is the royal robe that you're talking about, as far as we're talking about the cashmere and the beautiful embroidery that was on this, but as far as Denai and the guards of the army, the Dore, yes.
Okay. So the women of Wakanda, you know, I just think when a person is directing a piece, they bring their sensibility about life to their script. It's just like an artist who draws a painting. They can't get outside of themselves and be someone else. They are the artist drawing the painting. And I think the same goes for a director when he is creating a world. It is definitely going to speak to him personally, because I think that's what art is. You are expressing yourself. And with the Dora, there was a desire to make them have this royal look to them. And also we looked at the color, and we wanted to make sure that we used this vibrant red on the door. That's how they are in the comics. But you notice in the comic, you know, I say they're bombastic in the comics. But you know, comics were written a long time ago for little boys and men. And so the girls always have this like boom, bang, bow, you know. So So our thoughts were you can't really even get into a lot of detail with the comics because the boxes are so small, but we could because we're talking about a film medium. And so the first concept art came out, and I looked at it, and I felt like we needed to represent Africa with the creation of these costumes. And so the color palette was discussed, and I decided to raise the color, the red, raise the view of the red. So the red is much more vibrant. And also I looked at the Himba women and how they used the soft leather drapes, and then they decorated the edge and they stretched the edges of their leather drapes to have them have this ruffling effect. Also, they have a tabard that goes down the center front of their costume. And I felt like we need to make sure that that tabard has meaning, because if you're going to wear an apron, basically, I turned it into a work of art and really beaded it in the spirit of the Turkana and many tribes around Africa that use beads that have meaning and have a story behind them. They also had little talismans. They had little good luck charms on the front of their tabard, and each girl had a piece of art on their tabard that represented their tribe, where they were from. Lupita's was a little alligator representing the river tribe where she was from. So, the beads of Africa basically, told the story. The tabard told a story. The Panther buckle that they had in the front, we did a lot of R&D on what size it would be, but it was made up of several layers that were hand cut and made by a jeweler. Denai, the leader of the Dora Milaje, had all the same elements. We actually printed some Wakandan language on the back of her skirt, but that apron turned into a harness, and the harness held the tabard. So I felt like this needed to be like a Japanese samurai costume. It needed to be like something that's handed down, something that's given to you in a great honor, because they are the highest fighting force. And also, Ryan wanted the neck pieces to feel like jewelry, so that when you see Denai as the head of the Dora Milaje, her armor is gold, where the rest of them are in silver.
Did Denai's character, or the strength that she brings on screen, I mean, we are very used to seeing her in The Walking Dead. When she first walked into your room and you were prepared to dress, was there?
She was like, "Girl, I'm tired. I've been training all day." So I was like, "I got a chair for you right there. Just sit down."
Yes. One of the wonderful actors that we're going to have today, unfortunately, he had a production shoot that ran very late, is the wonderful Winston Duke, who I think if you're like me, you were kind of wondering, there's snow in Africa, and these brothers of the Jabari tribe are wearing these wonderful furs. But I would love to have him here to kind of talk about that piece, to kind of drive that home, right?
I have Winston. I'm going to go through this because here's Winston's costume. Winston was the leader of the Jabari, and I fell in love with the Dogon tribe of Northern Africa. The Dogon were one of the first astronomers. They studied the stars. They did this incredible woodwork. They lived on the mountain cliffs. They built their homes on the cliffs of the mountains. And when we got the Jabari information, they lived on the cliffs in a mountainous area, just like the Jabari, and I was totally obsessed. Ryan wanted to bring a raffia skirt to them, and then the Dogon had raffia skirts that they wore during their kind of solstice celebration, or celebration of the stars. And so, let me go back. So I thought I had another one of him. No, I don't. Oh, wait, I think I do. Let's see. Nope. Okay. So, yeah, so I really studied the Dogon in terms of getting the woodwork. They did these incredible masks that were 8 feet tall, 10 feet tall, and it was all in celebration of the stars. And they had this movement that they did when they had the masks on. I was totally obsessed. So I had my illustrator, who actually drew this costume for me, carve the armor. So, after he was finished with the illustration, we got him a block of clay in a dress form, and he went to carving the shapes on Winston's armor in honor of the Dogon tribe.
So,
Yeah.
Ruth, we would like to thank you so much for taking your
Okay.
time. I know this is a really busy week.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
And
it.
thank you.